Hello and welcome to another episode of Not Too Deep. I'm your host, Grace Helbig. Very thrilled to let you know that we have a couple chatty broads on this episode of Not Too Deep. Bekah Martinez and Jess Ambrose of the podcast Chatty Broads, might know them from there, are with me this episode, and they are a goddamn delight. I'll tell you what. We talk about Bekah's history coming from a Bachelor contestant into full-fledged mother, full-fledged podcast host, full-fledged living life without regard to purpose, but with open arms to opportunity. And Jess, we talk about their origin story of meeting each other, her foray into motherhood, what it's like working with your partner and best friend. And we talk a lot about motherhood. They have such great insight and just such great attitudes about all of it. As a dog mother, I really appreciate everything they had to say. This was just such a lovely episode. So please enjoy Not Too Deep with Chatty Broads, Jess and Bekah. Bekah, Jess, so excited to talk to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
First things first, I am curious about the friendship origin story. How did you guys meet each other? And also kind of curious how each of you separately describe your origin stories.
Oh, we definitely describe it the same. we literally became friends on this podcast together, basically.
Okay.
Yes, which is on our, not this podcast. We've never been on this podcast before.
I would be happy to be the catalyst for the friendship to happen today, right now.
Grace, you are creating a friendship as we speak. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, basically we had mutual friends and we hung out a bit, but we literally had no independent friendship aside from random conversations we would have like at bars. And then basically, long story short, like I was on The Bachelor. I came off The Bachelor, had my Instagram platform, and Jess was like, hey, have you ever wanted to start a podcast? And I was like, yeah, actually I have. And she was like, why don't you come over and
we've had these bar conversations. I feel like we know each other in an intimate and vulnerable setting.
Exactly. She was like, I think we can do something cool.
You know, when you meet someone and even though you're like, I have no intimate relationship with you at all, but somehow every time I bump into you, we end up kind of being in a corner and talking for like 3 hours while all of our other friends are hanging out.
You create your own bubble with each other.
Exactly. That was just kind of how it was with us. We'd always end up just talking for a long time. And then I think the big switch too was when Bekah ended up getting pregnant. And I had at the time, my daughter was probably just 3, had just turned like 3 years oldish. And
not even
3
that month.
I guess.
Yeah. Wow.
But we didn't have I had no friends in Los Angeles that had children. And so as soon as she was like, I'm pregnant, I don't really know anybody with kids, we started to talk. And then that was kind of like, hey, maybe we should do this podcast together and we could talk about motherhood.
We should talk with microphones in front of us.
The first time we ever hung out one-on-one was recording in this studio. And we were like, and we listened to it back and we were like, that was really good. And then we actually never released that episode. Maybe we should do it one of these days. But then
we truly should, because that's like the flirting period of your friendship.
And then it was only like most of the only time Jess and I have hung out has been on the podcast. Now we've done almost 300 episodes and it's just been like we've gotten to know each other through doing it together.
Okay, so I also do another podcast with my best friend. And so I'm curious what your strategy is when you record, because we call each other like Roman fighters that have to be locked away from each other before we actually start recording, so that we don't have any fake reactions to each other's stories when we start talking. Do you have any of those ground rules set for each other?
I'd say unspoken.
Definitely unspoken, because it's and that's what's so funny too. Like Bekah was saying, that we pretty much only hang out on the podcast. Yeah. And I feel like it's weird when a listener hears that, they go like, oh, is that like a fake friendship? It's like, no, this is one of my very best friends, but we end up spending so many hours a week together. and we just don't talk really except business until we're on. I mean, we'll text back and forth, but then you have the stories and the moments.
I mean, we spend a whole day together once a week, like, and especially since we both have kids and like other stuff going on, it's like, you think we're going to spend more time hanging out? I got other friends.
In the actual on paper, you guys should be with your families more.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Also, I think it's important to like maintain a good relationship. Like, you see it with other podcasts and other entertainers. Like, if they're a little too intertwined in each other's lives outside of like the business they share together, it's possible that could like affect like the business they have together, which it is a business relationship.
I mean, kind of growing off of that, you guys also are friends that work together, but you also have husbands that also work with you working together. How did that develop? Your husbands know each other first? Did you have to have like a meet and greet situation? Was it nerve-wracking? Was there tension? Was there expectations?
The first time they had kind of met again, occasionally like bumping into each other at like a group hang, but they didn't have like a friendship at all. And the first time we all hung out together was, I think, for a recording of like, let's do a couples podcast episode and ask crazy questions.
So the podcast is really, forging relationships in your guys' lives.
We did stay at your mom's house. And I think that might have been before we had all four recorded together.
That's true. We had a one spend the night situation.
Yeah. And you had a sleepover.
We had a sleepover. And I think that we all talked together and it was kind of like, oh, we all have fun talking together. Like, why don't we all go on the podcast together? Yeah, I think that might have been the first time.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And then it's funny because then, they don't, again, because we don't see each other outside of the podcast, they're not seeing each other outside of the podcast at all.
That you know about.
That we know about. Very true. Very true. They could be having sneaky meetups.
Wait, do you remember too, though, when you guys would come record at my house right after I had Ruth, we would have to record and then we would have to send them away. So we'd be like, go get beers together.
That's
like,
true.
We did that.
Have a date
too.
together.
That's true.
Go hang out.
And then the two of them, they have great chemistry together as well, which is so, it's so bizarre that Bekah and I met, we have good chemistry together. And then the two of them have really good chemistry together. So now every other week they have Chatty Bros, a version of their like duo on our show. And, I feel like sometimes our listeners like them more than they like us.
Yeah, that's the slippery slope. You realize they're in it for the bros and not the broads.
Exactly.
I'm curious, Bekah, you mentioned already Bachelor. And this has now become, and I'm not going to super harp on this, but this has become interwoven into the content that you guys create. Is there a genuine interest in this show that you were a part of? Or does it feel like an obligation to have to kind of comment and be kind of up on the newest episodes, the newest season, etc.?
I think it depends on the day for sure and the mood. I loved the show before I went on it. I was like, oh, I want to be on the show. I love it. And some days I love it and sometimes it sucks and it feels like work and I'm like, ugh.
Sure.
A lot of times I think I would watch the seasons anyway, but the thing that sometimes is hard is when you have to. Of course, that's always hard where you're like, oh my gosh, on my Monday night, I want to relax and not watch The Bachelor. And now I have to sit down and watch The Bachelor because we're going to talk about it tomorrow morning. And then the other thing that's kind of hard sometimes is since I am Bachelor affiliated and I was on the show, there's a greater pressure. People are more... if I say something about a cast member, even if I don't know them, it's I'm part of the Bachelor family. So it's how could you say that about Katie or whatever, and it's
it's a bit religious. Yeah. It's a bit of, you're indoctrinated into it and everyone respects highly your opinion, assuming that you have firsthand connection and the phone number of every single person that gets brought into the church.
Exactly. So that's kind of hard sometimes. But generally, I like The Bachelor. Sometimes I feel over it. Sometimes I'm not over it. And, it is what it is.
Well, I have not watched any of the most recent season. I'm curious, how do you guys describe what's going on currently to someone that hasn't caught up yet?
So Katie's Bachelorette season just ended a week ago. And then now there's only one episode out of Bachelor in Paradise. Okay. So it was just back to back. So I will say this last Bachelorette season with Katie, we loved it.
Pretty poppin'.
We loved it. Apparently the ratings were not there. And
Okay.
but we were both confused because we felt like the season was great. It was truly dramatic. There were a
Yes.
lot of twists and turns to it.
What are the elements that appeal to you guys that make it a better season for you?
I personally like, for the podcast talking about it, I don't like Bachelor seasons as much because then you feel kind of icky, like gossiping about the girls and like commenting on their outfits. But the guys, it's a free for all, you know?
Very
You're like,
baby.
this guy's a loser. This one's
Knuckles
outfits are
crack.
trash.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
It's like,
It's our time to drag them all.
exactly. It's just like easier. It's lighter. It's just more fun.
And at the end of the day, too, when you look at the track record of relationships that have actually worked post the show, it's like 10 times more the Bachelorette relationships have worked.
Oh.
And the Bachelor ones never do. I mean, like, there have been like 2 Bachelor relationships that have actually succeeded post.
They're just confused and
Wow.
horny.
Yeah.
So the data speaks for itself.
It really does. There's actually an Instagram called Bachelor Data, and they have all the numbers there. Like it's, and you literally see the data right in front of you, and you're like, this makes
Wow.
sense. Yeah.
Sometimes we think that, sometimes I think about needing hobbies, and then I realize, like,
And then you
maybe
go-
just being out in nature is the best for all of us.
Honestly, sometimes after a full season, especially like this, where the Bachelorette season has ended and we're
Yeah.
going right into Bachelor in Paradise, Beck and I just look at each other, and it's just kind of like, I just need to go outside for 2 seconds because how is this my world right now? And how do I know and care about all of these things?
Well, that's
It's too
okay.
much.
I'm like Real Housewives obsessed, and so like, and the amount of stored information I have about all of these women that I've never met is unfathomable to my fiance when I can't explain science at all. So I fully understand that, like, it's just innate in me. I'm curious.
Can you tell me real quick? Sorry
that?
to interrupt.
Yeah.
But which housewife would you be if you had to be any of them?
If I had to be any of them, which one would I be? Oh God, I see elements of myself in so many of them. They're all absolutely wild. I mean, Garcelle this season on Beverly Hills is wonderful. I think Sutton is an absolute maniac, but also her parents were psychoanalysts. And so I'm kind of interested in that, like, full upbringing that she's had. Kyle is a people pleaser, needs all of her sisters around, needs constant attention and validation. Lisa Vanderpump, I know you guys have been to her house. I've also been to her house.
Yes.
How
best.
wild was that situation?
She's the best.
That was one of the weirdest experiences and most wonderful experiences ever. I'm like, we're having tea with LVP
She's
right
so
now.
cool.
She's so cool.
Yeah, and she asked us if we wanted wine or tea. And I was like, wow, you really are exactly who you are.
She really
Wonderful.
is.
Totally. Okay, sorry. Back to your question. I interrupted you.
What would you, and if you guys have speculated on this, what would you want to see that hasn't been done on The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise?
I know what
scenario.
Jess wants to see.
What is
What
it?
do I want to see? Oh my gosh,
You
I'm
want to see?
so
You want to see a
interested.
gay lead?
Oh, I would love to have a gay lead. I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, it's kind of like, come on, everybody! Like, it's high time. I also am very excited. They're casting for seniors, and that was the other one I was really hoping.
Yes.
I would love.
But what are they calling seniors? Are they calling like 33-year-olds?
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, could I potentially try to get on this show? Are you considering me as a 33-year-old a senior? I'm hoping that we're looking at. I mean, my guess is it's going to be like early 60s.
Yeah, probably.
What I would live for a nursing home like 80, 90 situation because, you know what they say, it gets wild. It gets wild in the senior community, and there's a lot of love triangles, and I want to see it. I want to be a part of it.
I've
I don't
never
know about
heard
the
that
80s
there's
and
love
90-year-olds.
triangles. Oh
I
my
think
God.
I think it's the
yeah.
senior communities with the 60 and 70-year-olds who live in like they have like little condos all in the same complex. I don't think it's like nursing homes.
I sure don't know. I could tell you some stories about my grandmas. She's told me some wild shit.
You're on your way out, live it up.
Yeah, you know who you are, you know who you're not,
Exactly.
and you know that you only have so much time left, so fuck it. Just do whatever you
Exactly.
want.
I'm like, I'm going out. I would like to go out with a bang, literally. That is what I'm hoping for.
Is there another reality program that either of you would be part of? Like, would you guys do The Amazing Race together?
Any show. Really? Casting, hit
Are
us
you
up.
casting?
Really? Because I assume that it's one way or the other. After being on that kind of program, that you would have like a total like,
Nah.
I hate this. I know how it works. I don't want to be part of it. But
No,
no,
I mean, it's horrible and exploitative, but it's also so fun. It's so fun. I mean, it's just crazy. And they're asking you to like constantly be a more theatrical version of yourself, which is like, it's really fun.
Yeah,
I don't
you really
know.
push your own boundaries.
Yes. I think we have talked. We've said we would kill it at The Amazing Race.
We would love
to
be on it.
Anyone's casting, please hit us up.
It would be an
We're begging.
absolute shit show because this one right here is quite athletic, very strategic in the way that that we would be going about things, very competitive. And I am like, to me, I'm like, sleep burns calories. I don't like to move very often. I get very confused with directions. So it would be just us screaming at each other the entire time and her dragging my ass to try to get across the finish line.
I think we would get really competitive together and we would be like,
I would. But I'd also definitely be trying
Like Mario
to. I'd be trying to like devise a way to be like, can we go to this bar, flirt with these gentlemen, and then they can drive us somewhere? Like I'm trying
which would be genius.
I'd be trying to kind of navigate some tricky ways around the situation of me having to move more than I really want to.
It would be honestly wonderful television.
Yeah,
And
we're really hoping for it.
Yeah. The good thing is the majority of my audience is casting directors. So
We love
they're out there.
Amazing.
They're listening right now. Okay. We are going to take a quick break. When we get back, I have so many questions about motherhood for both of you.
We've got all the answers.
That's what I
Experts.
assume. So
Experts.
we'll be right back if we're not too deep.
Not too deep. With Grace Helbig.
Hello, listeners. Grace Helbig here, wanting to say two things. A big thank you for listening to the podcast. If you're a regular listener, if this is your first time listening, welcome and thank you. And second thing, if you are enjoying yourself here in this not too deep world we've built and you'd like to leave us a review, that would be so wonderful. If you can go to the iTunes store, the App Store, and leave us a lovely little review, comment. How are you feeling? Good, bad, otherwise? Maybe just good or otherwise would be appreciated. Other than that, enjoy the podcast. Okay, we're back in. Before we get into the motherhood of it all, I am curious because you guys have been doing your podcast now for 2 or 3 years.
Jeez, it's going to be 3 years this fall.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
so wild. What's the if there is a standout like moment or episode or guest that you've had that kind of blew your mind unexpectedly or was just like memorable for potentially compromising reasons?
Oh, yeah. I have some memories of the compromising reasons.
Oh my God, do tell.
Should I bring up the Rbg scandal? No.
Oh no, yeah. We can't go
Well,
there.
it's been brought up and we can move past it. if we need to.
Basically, long story short, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I said I didn't really know much about her. And then on the podcast, I go, oh, now I feel bad. This is exactly what I said. I go, now I feel bad for me and my sister making fun of people who were crying yesterday.
Ah. So
wasn't informed about
learning
who
experience.
RBG. Yes. And there's been a lot of those moments on the podcast where you go, I don't know enough about what I need to know about. And I'm realizing sometimes that I'm like, oh, I'm kind of a selfish asshole in my own bubble. You say something and then the audience is like, oh, hell no. And you get educated quickly, which has honestly been one of my favorite things about having this podcast.
Yeah.
That it's like, I have learned so much from the audience, like sending in messages and be like, hey, when you said this, hey, that was ableist. And I'm like, okay, I need to learn and grow. And it's been a really, like, I feel so grateful over the past few years that I feel like I've been able to glean a lot of knowledge from people that I normally don't think I would have had those type of exchanges with.
Right. Any kind of interaction with.
And there's the humility of being open to that sort of constructive criticism, and also the kind of facade, I think, that an audience like ingests, that you as podcast hosts are the pinnacle of knowledge about everything and anything that you talk about, when at the end of the day, you are just complex human beings that experience the world in ways that everyone else does too.
And I'm like, oh, great. I'm learning that I grew up in this very small bubble that needs to be popped. And that's been a really cool experience about having this podcast.
I think it also gives you, it forces you to have discernment and critical thinking too, because like you could apologize for everything that you say that someone gets upset about. And then you learn to have discernment and you're like, you know what, this is maybe important to address. And then this, it maybe isn't that deep, and this person, it might be their responsibility to like get over what I said, you know? And it's hard to discern that at first, and then you come to sort through it. And I actually think that it helps you do more critical thinking just in your everyday life with the people around you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And kind of tying that into the thing that you guys share, which is motherhood, I wonder, like, you know, having these spawns of yourselves, if that creates a mental space that makes you a little bit more discerning, a little bit more like aware of yourself in the world as a role model to a child.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like I'm grateful for the podcast because I feel like it's enabled me to be a better parent, again, just because of learning a lot of different things from the audience and hearing different people's unique experiences and different people's perspectives outside of just my own, that I'm able to then have these conversations that I don't think I would have known about or had with my daughter. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I can have these conversations with you that I never had with my parents when I was younger.
Wow.
And hopefully you can like walk in this world as a more empathetic person who's like willing to hear people out and understand perspectives and realize that like it's not just your world that you're living in.
Yeah.
I think that's been, my daughter's 5, she's going to be 6 soon. And it's kind of that like integral part where she's
becoming a person.
Exactly. She's actually like this little human being who's like remembering things and asking like complex questions now, where I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. I would have probably answered that differently a few years ago. But now that I've learned from like different guests we've had on or different listeners about like, hey, when you say this, that can be like damaging to a child. Exactly. And so it's like, oh my God, we're having these really open conversations where mom's able to be like, a lot of the times my answer is, I don't know. And I'm okay saying that now. And I'm comfortable being like, I have no idea. Let's try to figure that out together.
I think it's also taught me to just like, and I guess I'm giving like the yin and the yang of this topic. And I definitely feel how Jess feels, but I also feel like it's taught me like to tune out the background noise of people's opinions that don't really fucking matter.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, some people have valuable insight and some people fucking don't. And they just want to be heard because they have their own bullshit that they're dealing with and that they're coming from. And I feel like that's really helpful in parenting because there's always going to be someone who's giving their 2 cents on a situation, and it thickens your skin and it gives you that critical thinking and you're like, okay, yeah, I'll take that advice that's actually really helpful and applicable to my situation with my kids. And then it's like, and no, I don't give a fuck about what you think. And I actually know what's best for me and my family.
It must really attune like your intuition on shit, that like you have to trust your gut a bit. I mean, I don't have children, I have a dog, but still like the amount of questions around like, you know, the keeping anything alive is like endless. And the amount of advice and information that is offered on that situation is endless.
Yeah.
And being able, like you said, to discern like what sticks with you and is applicable and what doesn't is like a muscle that you have to like exercise, I imagine.
Absolutely. And sort through like what shit you're coming from too. Like how am I like projecting like my insecurities as a parent or deficiencies, things that my parents didn't like feel that I needed as a kid. And then realizing that everyone's doing the same thing. So when people are saying, when people are saying like, oh, I would never do this with my kids. Like sometimes it's like, okay. And that's probably because of something you experienced. And like, I know I'm coming from a place of doing what I believe is best for my children. And ultimately that's all we can do.
Yeah. I mean, it must be fun to have each other and be able to kind of commiserate for better or worse on all of the situations with children, because they, to me, seem like endless responsibilities
and escape them
questions.
too. We can escape them and just be ourselves with each other too. And,
I think that's one of the biggest takeaways in the past 3 years with our relationship on the podcast has been like, oh, what's not talked about a lot, like really in our culture, is the separation between like when you're a mom, you're not just a mom. And there's this big fixation on like when you're a mom, that's who you are. That's your label. It's like, no, I'm still Jess. Like I also am a mother, but I still need, I believe, to be a good parent. I need to have my own identity still, have my own enjoyment, my own space. Yeah. And that podcast has been a lot of that, where it's like, okay, we get to talk about things that we're super interested in, outside of just
potty training.
Exactly. And so like we can talk shit about a reality TV show and like, get our opinions like off of our chest about this and that, and just have our own space to just continue to be us and not just always.
Because, people don't do that to dads. Like people don't be like, wow, like you're, and like dad life, such a dad thing. Totally.
Have you lost your identity as a father figure?
Right. It's like, no, because we make space for male parents to live their own separate lives, and there's no expectation that they're going to dedicate every waking hour to their children.
Yeah. Well, I also wonder too, I mean, you guys both carried your children, that like the actual physical experience of, being the resource center for the library where all of the baby gets knowledge and born from, and then the bystanders of father. So like their trends, they don't really have much of a transition where you guys go through truly everything.
Well, and it's true. And like the first year, at least our experience, like I was pretty much only breastfeeding, and it was like, there was like nothing he could really do to even help in the first year. And so it was kind of like, I know you want to be active. Exactly. It's like, you're kind of just bugging me. Yeah. But you're right. Like there's not that transition. And sometimes there's actually like no good ways to help at first too.
Interesting. It's true. I'm going to shift focus for a second. I'm going to get into now the 2 questions I ask every single guest that is on this podcast. And the first is, who, alive or dead, would you most like to throw cold spaghetti at? Yeah. Heavy hitting.
Ooh, that is.
And the way I interpret that, right, is it's like if you're throwing cold spaghetti at them, it's not like a super violent or bad thing. So this is then, to me, someone who irks me throughout history, not someone who is like a hated figure.
It's totally up to intention. Okay. You can also throw it celebratory. You can do whatever strikes you in this moment. And this is also what I consider like a fleeting answer. Like it's who right now. You might have a different answer later today, tomorrow, etc.
Okay, I will throw cold spaghetti at Chrissy Teigen. Because she's always annoyed me, and now I don't like her with the stuff that she was doing in her online dealings. So
no follow-up questions. Totally understand.
Check. Get that.
Got it.
I will throw cold spaghetti for a different reason, because I believe if I threw cold spaghetti at this person, that he would probably like it, and it would result in some weird new friendship between us. And so I would throw cold spaghetti at Danny DeVito.
Wow, love that answer. That's a good answer.
I feel like we'd end up rolling around in a giant meatball sort of bathtub together and all just sorts of friendship.
Are you throwing it at Frank, or are you throwing it at Danny DeVito?
I feel like Frank. I mean,
are you just dropping it, or are you throwing it?
Right. I am throwing it
just
against
like
his bare chest.
Dance,
yeah, and then we can kind of do a little string along. There has to be meatballs in this situation. Heavy marinara,
heavy sauce.
And I feel like it's I think Frank, but I also feel like Danny DeVito and Frank are kind of just the same.
When does one one end and the other begin.
I really don't know. But I would love to have a Lady in the Tramp type situation with him.
Oh,
you know,
it escalates.
It escalates because it's like, when you're with him, you just can't help it. Am I attracted to him? No. Maybe one day.
Yes, maybe.
If there's spaghetti involved.
I'm going to leave that for you
Such
and
a
your
good answer.
therapist to talk through a bit more. Okay, the other question I ask every single guest is to tell us your worst pants shitting story or like a bathroom emergency situation. However, you can only use 3 words or small phrases to describe the event. So, for example, mine is college jogging front lawn. Yeah.
I've heard a story or two that sounds like that. Anyway.
Yeah, you shouldn't go on long distance runs.
No, never. I just say no running ever. That's just like rule of thumb.
Get a treadmill. That's all.
I avoid all of those. I will say, overseas,
Oof.
watery, and no toilet paper.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna actually. Mine's sort of similar. Yeah, it was Costa Rica, bad water, and outdoor bathroom.
Which could be anything.
Really could be.
Yep.
Well, as always, out of respect for my guests, no follow-up questions to any of those descriptions.
Thank you. No one wants to know the follow-up for what happened.
I think we got it. I think we all can understand what has happened.
Rotavirus and yeah.
Okay, now we have a section of the podcast that we call Deep or Hot, where you guys can choose whether you would like to answer a deep question or give me a hot take on a topic that we have for you. And we have deep questions prepared for you as well, if you choose that.
Ooh. Wait, so if we give a hot take, we have to just make up what we're doing a hot take on?
No, I have a prompt for your hot take.
Ooh.
So you can choose whether you would like to give a
You
hot
go
take
first.
on something that we have for you or answer a deep question that we have for you.
Okay, I'm going to do a hot take.
You're going to do a hot take.
I'll do
Okay.
a hot take.
Then so hot take is done. So Bekah, you have to do deep question. Okay.
Okay. Are we
Yep,
good with
I'm
this?
prepared.
Okay.
Okay. Hot take. We've kind of touched on this already, but hot take on finding or evolving your identity as a mom.
My hot take is kind of similar to what I said, but I will not subscribe to I am mother. Like to me, I have many different forms every single day. I have many different formations, and I am who has been the past 33 years, which includes being a child, being a girlfriend, being a friend, being a businesswoman, a mother. That's one of the pieces of who I am. And I've learned a lot from being a mother. I adore my kid, but I firmly believe that if motherhood is the sole identity, that it is not good for your child.
Inner and external child.
Yeah.
Interesting. I love that answer. I'm going to ruminate on that later today. Bekah, would you like your deep question?
Ready.
Okay.
I just instantly start sobbing.
I know. I'm still working through whether this segment works for me as a host on this show. Because I'm really
I'm not ready.
putting people in uncomfortable situations that I'm trying to also help navigate.
Oh, I'm ready.
When was the last time you questioned your purpose in life?
I'm really not trying to be a smartass in this answer, but I don't think I've ever questioned that. And I'm really not trying to be cheeky with that, but
no, I get it. Yeah.
I feel like I have always delighted in the possibilities that could unfold like around any corner. And so even when life is getting like a little monotonous, or I'm feeling like I'm lacking purpose in the job I'm in, or feeling a lack of deep connections around me, I am like instantly excited about the possibility that because I'm feeling a deficit in my life, that probably means that something's about to ramp up around the corner. Whether it's a new opportunity, whether it means like going back to school or starting a new relationship.
Congratulations, you just graduated, right?
Yes, thank you. And
Congrats.
I already signed up for City College classes this fall.
Hell yeah.
There we go. Or it's like a new friend you might meet out or a new hobby to pick up. Like there's always something around the corner, and I try not to take it too seriously in terms of what is my purpose, because my purpose is just kind of to like hang with people and discover new things about myself and about the world around me as I go.
I love that. You're saying yes to life.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I questioned my life's purpose yesterday, which is why our dynamic is good.
This is why you guys are yin and yang. This is why you balance out.
It's like you're never stuck. You can always just stop not always, but sort of always. Like you can't always just stop or choose, like, I don't know. I mean, privilege comes into all of that, but I don't believe we're ever truly trapped in the position that we're in, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Because there's a
think
bit
more
of
about
like,
that.
when you define purpose, it almost sort of limits opportunity in a way that you're like, oh, this is what I am. This is what I'm doing. And then it doesn't create any space for the unknown to be able to be present. And I think for both of you guys, obviously your trajectory has been just like, you couldn't plan for everything that's happened in your lives necessarily. So it seems like a good mantra to just kind of like continue to say yes to whatever comes.
Yeah. And I guess despite like, there's always usually a person around that you can connect with or learn more about yourself through, right? Even if you are stuck in like a shitty job and like whatever situation, it's like there's usually something that you can suck a little joy out of.
There you go. Put that on a t-shirt. Get that merch going.
Suck joy.
Okay, we're going to take one last break. When we get back, we have a couple questions sent in from listeners that need some advice, and we've all clearly established that we all know how to do life correctly enough to give other people advice.
Perfect.
So we'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Okay, we are back in, and I have a couple questions that have been sent in that I think might be a bit more tailored to you guys and thoughts that you might have. So,
excellent.
This is a question about aging. This listener writes, I'm turning 30 in September, and I'm a little nervous. What is your advice on how to embrace your 30s?
Well,
I am not 30 yet.
Have you had these thoughts at all about 30?
The only reason that aging bothers me is I get very anxious about wanting to experience more things. Like I start thinking about like, how many movies can I even watch before I die? How many books can I read? How many places can I actually go in the world?
You see it like a little hourglass with the sand.
Yes. And I'm like, there's so much more I need to do.
The other day she literally said, she was like, oh my God, I'm just anxious about like, what if I don't read all the books that I want to read? And I'm like, I'm anxious about imminent death. And I'm really nervous about aging.
Like being able to digest kale.
I'm gonna be 33 soon. And I would say, I totally to this listener, completely valid. First of all, validate your feelings. I remember being almost embarrassed about how kind of anxious I felt about turning 30 because I did not think I was going to have that moment where I'm like, oh my God, like I'm getting older. But all of a sudden it did hit me and I was super anxious about it. But I would say it's not a cliche when you hear specifically women, I would say in this, say definitely. That life really blossoms at that point. And totally. I have had the best years of my life since I hit 30. I have never felt just more confident in my own skin, and who I am and not giving a shit about.
Also, you know what your skin does and what kind of care you need.
Exactly. We know the oil to put on and the Botox doctor to call.
Yes.
And I have all that dialed in at this point and I feel good. And it's like, yeah, in your 30s, it's like, I'm not hiding the fact that I have Botox anymore, where I would be uncomfortable talking about that beforehand.
Totally.
It's just, you have, the world is like just opening up more and more. So it's okay to be anxious, but I would just say it's like, oh my goodness, it's so exciting to look forward to because they are the best years in my opinion so far.
Do you guys have, for lack of a better term, like self-care things that you are your go-tos? Like, are you bath people? Are you like, let me put some incense on, or let me meditate? Or like, do you have things that are your regular, like when you're feeling anxious?
You know, it's interesting. We had a guest on recently. Now I can't think of his name, but he wrote the book.
John Kim.
He wrote a book called I don't remember what anything's called. What is it?
Single.
Don't worry. You need to remember those Bachelor contestants.
Right. That's what's, I'm like, we can tell you. No, it's The Angry Therapist, and his book is Single on Purpose.
Okay, Single on Purpose. Anyway, what he's talking about what he talks about with being single is like basically dating yourself, getting to know yourself better. But something that really stood out to me just with everything in my life, like career and kids and partner and blah, 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 is he was like, when do you feel like most like you? And so I started thinking about that and I'm like, oh, I feel really like me when I go thrift store shopping or when I'm doing a little DIY project or, you know, while watching shitty reality TV. And so lately I've tried to remember those things as my self-care instead of like, you know, a face mask or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do something that makes me feel like me, even if it's just like laying out on the beach by myself and sleeping in the sun, you know?
I totally subscribe to that concept. Did it take you a bit to like accept that those are the things that like made you feel good versus like they seem, because like I'm the same way, that I love shitty reality TV on in the background, like a podcast while I'm like doing dishes or whatever. But it's taken me a bit to like accept that that's when I'm comfortable and that's how I let off steam. Whereas before I was like, I should be doing something more constructive, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, definitely. Until I feel like just having a conversation with him and other people, it's like, oh, I need to like prioritize things that bring me back to myself. Otherwise, like everything's going to suffer. But I'm so with you. I'm like, I love getting high and listening to a comedy podcast and folding my laundry and it relaxes me and I feel good.
Yeah.
So
smoking, like taking an edible and then watching a show about dogs getting adopted will really help recenter your soul.
It's so true.
Yes. Or like searching on Zillow at like 11 o'clock at night is also my therapy. So.
This is an A-frame that I should look into more.
Yes.
It's so true. I mean, I'm similar. My like more like basic self-care would be that I am a bath dweller and I will take like 3 baths a day until my skin is just like so dry.
Okay, because I'm not a bath person, but I aspire to be. And so I'm just so curious, like what in your brain is just like, I need to sit in this soup right now.
It's the hot water.
It's the hot water. And I also blame my like very religious upbringing. There's something about it that feels like a baptismal. I'm just like just washing off my yuck, and I'm just like
baptism over,
just dunking over and over again.
Rebirth.
But so I'm sure there's a lot of trauma in that self-care. But I'm like there's just it's the hot water, the smell. I'm like all about. I love putting like bath bombs and scents and whatever in it. I like the smell of like eucalyptus.
You like it like scalding hot too, right?
Burning
I do too.
my skin
I love to be just like beet red. I don't have a bathtub anymore though.
A tepid bath is like violent to me. Like that is so gross. It's so gross.
It's offensive.
It's very offensive.
So with you.
But I like a burning hot bath, and then I like to then like have like a comedy podcast on in the background where I could just turn my brain off.
Yeah.
And I'm also a big, like, I love my fireplace. I will turn my fireplace on when it is like 100 degrees outside. So
you like all forms of heat.
Yeah.
Yes,
through
me too.
every element.
And I also
Okay.
love to go to Palm Springs when it's like 120 degrees.
That
I love
is-
burning hot heat.
You want to talk about violence? Like that is like they go to Palm Springs every other weekend when it is literally 120 degrees where you can't breathe. And
I
I'm
love
like,
it.
what is?
I love just cooking.
I grew up in Fresno where it's 115 degrees, like
On the
150
regular.
days out of the year.
Ugh.
So that's just
Wow.
traumatizing for
I
me.
mean, yeah, I would be nervous to see you near an oven, I guess.
I'm just like,
it's
this is gonna be crawling in there.
dangerous. Tempting situation.
People are like, oh my gosh, you should try like a weighted blanket. I'm like, have you tried the oven?
You put your head in the oven lately?
Do you like saunas?
Love.
Why don't you get a sauna?
I mean, I'm not quite
Get
at
it,
that
queen.
level yet in my life, but I hope to aspire
They're not
to it
that
one day.
expensive.
I should look into it. And then also, honestly, like a meal with friends. There's nothing to me that cures any sort of anxiety and feeling of hopelessness than like sitting down and just like having
a last supper. Yeah.
Exactly. Having a nice conversation with friends like heals me almost instantaneously.
Do you guys cook? Are you people that work with food and turn it into other types of food?
I order a lot of food.
Okay.
I am not a chef. So I like to sit down at a restaurant with friends or over a nice ordered meal. I mean, I'm the worst host that has ever existed. There's nothing about
You're
me.
really selling yourself short on this.
Listen, you know what? I am great. I'm like, you give me a glass of wine and I'll sit on the counter and talk to you the whole time while you make dinner. And that's what I can offer you. And I feel like it's a pretty good offer, but I'm not a very good host at all.
I'm a pretty good cook, but I just haven't had time lately to do it. And I find myself very tired at the end of the day. So I kind of like, am just like, oh man. You know what it is? If someone else would do all the dishes for me, then I'm your girl.
I could do that for you. I could do the dishes.
See, if you guys hung out outside of your podcast, you have all these opportunities.
That's true. It's very true.
We're getting towards the end of this podcast. I'm curious, what's next for you guys? What are you working? I know you guys just did like a virtual live show recently, right?
Yes, that was so much fun.
Is there a good time to announce that we're quitting the podcast?
Yes, we have more live shows that we are planning to hopefully do. We had so much fun with that.
I don't know. We've been throwing around ideas for maybe even other podcasts branching off. Yeah, I don't know. I have got it in my head that I'm going to apply to grad school in a couple years.
Hell yeah.
we're going to be like relaunching my clothing line this spring.
Cool.
Who knows, you know?
Yeah, we're both kind of I feel like we're both in a similar space right now where there's like some cool opportunities coming up for the podcast that we're talking about and excited about, but we're also kind of like both in a similar space of like, what do we want to do with our lives?
Yeah.
And kind of experimenting with like what that might look like.
We're riding the wave.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just enjoying it while it's here.
It's I can't wait to see what you guys do. Also, as a bit of our appreciation to our guests, we like to make personalized horoscopes for our guests that I think Melissa is going to put in the chat for each of you. We have one for each of you.
Cool.
I don't know if you're able to access your chat situation.
Yes, let me see.
And then be able to read your horoscopes.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I'll read them because I can sit here and look at them.
Okay.
They're wildly unprofessional, but personal.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yes, I can see it. Okay, Bekah, do you want to read yours first?
Sure. Dear Aquarius, water bearer of the stars, you've been feeling the strength and need to take a hard stance for what you really believe in lately. What's new, bitch? Like a volcano ready to explode. Again, what's new, bitch? Or like a mom who missed her time to breastfeed and really needs to get it out type explosion.
Yes. Oh, I love when Bekah explodes. When we're about to do a podcast episode and she comes like barreling down and she's like, I have some thoughts. I am like never more excited.
Hit
and like,
record
I'm just like,
right now.
do it now.
I love the opportunity to make enemies and strengthen bonds with my allies.
We love the evolution.
So yes.
All right, Jess. Let's see. You guys have such bad eyes. It's embarrassing. Jess, dear Libra. Can you read it for me?
Scales of the stars. Scales of the star. Oh yeah, scales.
I'm a
Okay.
Libra too.
What's your birthday?
September 27th.
My boyfriend's September 28th. Okay.
Cool.
A full moon will arrive in your 5th house of passion later this month. This may inspire some fun quality time with your partner, maybe a fun nude photo shoot. This suggestion is purely based off your personal interest. Please do not sue this horoscope for sexual harassment.
Oh, there we go.
I love that. Wow, that feels very on. I legit just took a nude photo last night just because I was feeling it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this, but I feel validated.
Leak it.
Well, her husband is the one setting up all of our audio for this podcast. So you're like, I took a nude photo, don't know what I'm going to do with it. Haven't sent it to a single person. Bekah, Jess, this has been so fun. Where can people find you guys, your podcasts, individually, separately, together, and everything that you're up to if they don't already know?
Chatty Broads.
Chatty Broads. It is on all audio podcast platforms. Also, we have it on YouTube. At Chatty Broads on Instagram. My personal Instagram is The Bad Mom with 2 Ds.
My Instagram is @Bekah, BEKAH. Yes, bitch. That's
single handle.
That's
Hell
right.
One
yeah,
name
that's
handle.
badass.
Jealous?
2 Ds. Thank you guys so much. This was really so much fun.
Thanks, Grace.
Guys, go listen to their podcasts because, they keep themselves in lockdown 6 days of the week. And then one day they just unload on each other. And it's worth listening to. Go check out everything that they're up to. And we'll see you guys next time on another episode of Not Too Deep. Goodbye.
Too deep, too deep, too deep. Not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Not Too Deep is a production of Grace Helbig Incorporated. Producer Melissa D. Montz. Edited by Shireen Lani Eunice. Post-production sound by Chris Henry. And an extra special thanks to Flula for the theme music.